In the previous lesson, we looked at four simple CSS selectors, which are the element selector, the ID selector, the class selector, and the universal selector. In this video, we'll see how to add CSS to HTML documents. So I have created an index.html file, and in the body of my HTML documents, I have an heading. The content of my heading is how to cook oha soup. I added a paragraph, two images, and then I added a table. Before the table, there's an H2 heading for the ingredients. So my table contains the ingredients to make oha soup. Also, I have another heading for the cooking directions, under which there is an ordered list with several list items. So, in this lesson, we'll be looking at how we can style this HTML document, like how we can add CSS to this HTML documents. If I run this, this is the output. Can you see that there are no colors in this web page? Even the images are not proportional in size to each other. So what we're going to be doing in this video is to style this web page, and we'll be looking at how to add CSS to that particular web page. When the browser reads a style sheet, it will format the HTML document according to the information in the style sheet. There are three ways of inserting a style sheet to an HTML document. The first way is using external CSS. The second way is by using internal CSS, and the third way is by using inline CSS. Let's look at the first method, which is by using external CSS. Using external CSS, you are required to create a separate file for your style sheet. External styles are defined within the link elements inside the head section of an HTML page. With an external style sheet, you can change the look of an entire website by changing just one file. Each HTML page must include a reference to the external style sheet file inside the link elements, inside the head section. So this is what we are talking about here. You add your link elements inside your head elements. So this is how you would define a link element. Notice that this link element takes two attributes. The first attribute is the rel attribute, which has the value of style sheet. This is simply telling the browser that this particular link is referencing a style sheet document. And then the href. The href is pointing to the location of the style sheet. So the value that you typically should assign to your href is the name of your CSS file followed by the .css extension. External style sheets can be written in any text editor and must be saved with a .css extension. The external CSS file should not contain any HTML tags. So this is an example of what an external CSS file would look like. Notice that this is using the elements name selector. The elements selector, right? This is using the elements selector, and this body is an elements name. Is the body elements name, and then the h1 is also an elements name. The second method is by using internal CSS. An internal style sheet may be used if one single HTML page has a unique style. If one single HTML page has a different style from the rest of the pages, the Internal style is defined inside the style elements, also inside the head section. Remember that for external style sheets, you insert a link element inside the head element, but for internal style sheets, you use the style element inside the head element. I hope that's clear enough. The third method is by using inline CSS. An inline style may be used to apply a unique style for a single element. In this method, you add your CSS inside the opening tag of the HTML elements that you want to style. To use inline styles, add the style attributes to the relevant elements. The style attributes can contain any CSS property. Inline styles are defined within the style attributes of the relevant elements, and this is an example. As you can see, the style attribute is added inside the opening h1 tag. So you say style equals to, you open quotes, and then you start with the property name. Like this one now, we are going to change the color of the text of this h1 text. So this color is the property name, and text align also is a CSS property. So in this case now, we have two declarations, right? The first declaration is the color, setting the color to blue, and the second declaration is setting the text align to center. Please note that this semicolon is used to separate these two declarations. So now let's go back to the web page I showed you in the beginning of this lesson. So all we need to do is to add styling to make this web page look very beautiful and visually appealing. So I'm going to open my VS Code, and then I'm going to add an index.css file. Firstly, let's put the external CSS method into practice. So I want to use the universal selector to change the color of our web page, the color of the text on our web page to color color pink. So the property I'm going to be using is the color property, and so I'll set its value to purple, right? So this is a CSS rule using the universal selector. I know that this is a universal selector because I'm using this asterisk as the selector, right? So for me to add this CSS file into my HTML document, I need to go to my head elements and then create a link element. So remember that this link element will take two attributes. The first is the rel attribute. I'll set it to style sheet. And then the second attribute is the href. And I'll set the value to the name of my CSS file, which is index.css. So I'm going to save this by clicking Control S, and then I'll go back to my browser and refresh. Can you see that the color of the text has changed from black to purple? Let's proceed. So this is an example of how to use external CSS file. So let's see how to use internal CSS. What I'm going to do is to comment out this link element. So I'll cut this and paste it here. Right, so it has been commented out now. I don't want to delete it, but I don't want it I don't want a particular line to run when I open this web page in my browser. So I've commented it out. So now I'm going to copy this CSS rule and paste it here. So no, firstly I need to add my style elements. So it's in between the style elements that this CSS rule is going to be added, right? I'll save it and then I'll go back and refresh. Notice that the style is still existing. Alright, so this is how to use internal CSS. Using internal CSS, you have to make use of the style elements. You place your CSS code in between the opening style tag and the closing style tag. But for external styling, I've commented the style elements out. So if I comment boot and refresh my page, you see that there's no styling being added to my web page. So I'm going to uncomment the link elements and then refresh. So using this link elements, you're making use of external CSS. But if you are using the style elements and you're adding your style rules in between the opening style tag and the closing style tag, that is what is called internal CSS. So the last one I'm going to explain is the inline CSS. So I'm also going to comment this and then okay, let me use inline styling for my h1 elements. So I'm going to use the style attributes inside my h1 opening tag. So I'll set a property of color to purple. I'll save this and then refresh my web page. Can you see now that it is only this h1 element that the color has changed? Isn't it beautiful? Yes, it is. What I would also like to do is to resize these images. So I'm going to give the images. I'll use internal styling to give the images a height of 150 pixels. So the CSS selector I'm going to use now is the element selector. So I'm going to type the element name, which is img in this case, and then I'll set a height value of 150 pixels. Save, Ctrl S to save, and then I refresh. Yeah, looks very much better. So I want to uncomment my external styling so I can make use of it as well. So inside my external CSS file, I want to change the h2 elements. I want to change their color to pink. So I've used the element name selector again. So I'll say color pink. Alright, let me refresh my web page now. Notice that the h2 colors have changed as well. Alright, that's all for now. See you next week.